All right, so today we're going to be like jumping headfirst into this crazy world of VR gaming.
Oh, yeah.
It's we've got this article that's really got me thinking. It's called Virtual Reality in Gaming: A Leap Forward or a Dangerous Trend. And it's just got me wondering, you know, is this the next big thing in entertainment, or are we all going to end up in like a virtual twilight zone? I don't know.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about all the good, the bad, and maybe even get a little philosophical about what's real and what's not.
I like it.
So first things first, this article points out that VR has gone from like sci-fi fantasy to something we can actually experience at home, and it's become way more accessible. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
Oculus Quest 2, PlayStation VR, all of a sudden everybody's got their hands on this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like, the technology has advanced so quickly and the prices have come down.
Right, and then the games themselves?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Beat Saber, Half-Life. Alex,
Oh, yeah.
these are not just games. They're like universes you can step into.
Yeah, that's where the magic is, the immersion. You know, you're not just watching a screen anymore, you're actually in the game.
Yeah, the article calls it the allure of VR, and I totally get it. You know, imagine exploring alien planets or solving crazy puzzles, and it all feels real.
Totally.
But is that a good thing?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, is it too much? Like, are we mainlining fantasy directly into our brains?
Well, you know, that brings us to one of the big concerns with VR, its impact on mental health.
Right.
The article talks about how VR can be this incredible escape, but it also could blur the lines between real and virtual. And that could potentially be problematic, you know, especially for people who are already struggling with certain things.
And it's not just about how much time you spend in VR, right? It's about how our brains actually process these experiences.
That's exactly right.
So, like, how does that work?
Well, research suggests that the human brain, it isn't always great at distinguishing between intense experiences, whether they're happening in the real world or VR. So think about it. You're in VR, you're climbing a mountain, your senses are telling you you're doing that, even though you're just sitting in your living room. Your brain is getting all these signals.
Right.
And that disconnect can be really confusing for the brain over time. That could lead to a sense of disassociation.
Disassociation. Okay. I need you to break that down for me.
Sure, yeah. Disassociation is basically feeling detached from yourself or your surroundings. It's like your mind and body are out of sync.
Oh, okay.
So you might feel like you're watching yourself from outside your body, or like the world around you feels unreal. And in the context of VR, this could mean feeling disconnected from your physical body.
Wow, so it's not just about getting addicted to VR, it's like messing with your sense of reality.
Potentially, yeah.
And the article talks about physical risks too, which I think people don't always think about.
Yeah.
You'd think moving around in VR would be good for you.
Right? You would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, get your steps in.
But there are some potential downsides. Motion sickness can be a big issue, especially when the virtual movements don't match up with your actual movements.
Makes sense.
And then there's eye strain, you know, spending hours staring at a screen close to your face.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
But the article also mentions injuries from moving around in confined spaces.
Oh, yeah.
How does that even happen?
Well, imagine you're in this really intense VR experience. You're dodging zombies or you're swinging lightsabers.
I'm there.
But you totally forget about your real-world surroundings, right?
Right.
So you're so immersed, you forget about that toffee table in your living room or that low-hanging lamp, and bam, you know,
Ouch, yeah.
bruised shin, maybe even a concussion.
All fun and games until somebody loses an eye.
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like even though VR can take us to these amazing places, we're still stuck in reality.
We are very much grounded in reality.
With all its hazards and limitations.
Oh, right.
Which brings us to another concern, the social impact of VR. Because as cool as it is to connect with people in VR, is it really the same as face-to-face interaction?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, especially for younger generations. You know, they're already spending so much time online.
Right.
Could VR push us even further away from real-world relationships?
It's a concern that a lot of researchers are looking into because we know that face-to-face interaction is crucial for developing social skills, you know, for building empathy, for maintaining strong relationships. And while VR can provide a sense of connection, it can't fully replicate those nuances of nonverbal communication that you get in person.
Right. Yeah, I love the idea of hanging out with friends in VR.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'd want to replace all my real-life relationships with virtual ones.
Well, and think about it, like, in real life, you can tell if somebody's being sarcastic or if they're genuinely interested.
Right.
But in VR, it's harder to pick up on those subtle cues.
Yeah, it's true. And that leads to another layer of complexity, the question of identity.
Oh, here we go.
Getting philosophical, tell me more.
So in VR, you can create and embody any persona you want. Superhero, rock star, talking unicorn. The possibilities are endless.
Right.
But if we're spending more and more time inhabiting these idealized versions of ourselves in virtual worlds, how does that affect our sense of self in the real world?
That is deep.
Yeah.
Do we start to value our virtual identities more than our real ones?
That's the question that philosophers and ethicists are grappling with right now.
And it's one we're all going to have to confront as VR becomes more and more part of our lives.
Yeah, I think so.
This is heavy stuff, but I'm hooked. We've talked about the allure of VR potential for addiction, the physical risks, the social implications, and now these philosophical questions about identity and reality.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Well, quite a bit, actually. The article also delves into a topic that's becoming increasingly important in our digital age: data privacy.
Oh.
We already know that companies collect a ton of data about our online activities.
Right.
But with VR, it gets even more personal.
Data privacy in VR, that definitely sounds like a rabbit hole worth exploring.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we need a break before we go any deeper.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll be right back after a quick break to dive into the world of VR data collection and explore how this technology might be used for better or worse to understand and potentially influence our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Stay tuned.
So we're back, and my brain is still kind of spinning from that last conversation about how VR could change our whole sense of reality.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing, right?
Yeah, but now we're going to dive into this whole data privacy thing in VR, which honestly feels a little creepy.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, we know companies are already tracking everything we do online, but with VR, it's like they have access to our innermost thoughts and feelings.
Right, exactly. It's like in real life, I can kind of choose what I share about myself, but in VR, it's like they're looking right into my soul.
Yeah, it's definitely a new level of data collection. Think about it. A VR headset isn't just tracking your movements in the game. It's also collecting data on your eye movements, your heart rate, your facial expressions. It's like a window into your subconscious.
Okay, now that is seriously freaky.
Yeah, it is a little unsettling, but, it's not all bad. There are some potential benefits to this kind of data collection.
Okay, so what are we talking about here?
Well, imagine using this data to personalize learning experiences for students, or to develop therapies that are tailored to an individual's emotional responses.
Okay, I can see how that could be really amazing.
Right. It could revolutionize healthcare and education.
But what about the potential for misuse?
Well, that's the flip side, isn't it? I mean, if companies know how we react on such a deep level, couldn't they use that information to manipulate us?
Yeah, exactly. Without us even knowing it's happening.
Right. Think about a VR shopping experience that subtly nudges you towards certain products based on your emotional responses, or a social VR platform that tweaks its algorithms to keep you hooked.
That's terrifying. It's
Yeah.
like those subliminal messages in movies, but on steroids.
Pretty much. And it's not just about overt manipulation. It's also about the way our behavior is shaped by the design of these virtual environments.
Okay, so it's even if I'm making choices in the game, those choices are being influenced by the game itself.
Exactly. Every interaction, every emotion, it's all data that can be used to predict your behavior and influence your decisions.
So it's not just about what we do, it's about how the technology is designed to make us do it.
Yeah, that's why we need to be having these conversations about the ethics of VR.
Yeah, we need some serious safeguards in place.
Absolutely. We need to be asking tough questions about who controls this technology, how it's being used, and what's being done to protect our privacy and our autonomy.
I mean, it's not about saying VR is all bad.
Right.
It's about being aware of the risks.
Totally. We need to make informed choices about how we engage with this technology.
And remember, VR is still a relatively new thing, so as it keeps evolving,
Yeah.
we need to adapt our laws and our ethical frameworks to keep up.
I think that's crucial. And speaking of new developments, the article also mentions something called room scale VR.
Oh yeah, what's that all about?
So basically, room scale VR allows you to move around freely within a physical space like your living room, using tracking sensors that map your movements into the virtual world.
So it's like my whole living room becomes part of the game.
Exactly. It's one of the things that makes VR so immersive. You're not just sitting there, you're physically walking, ducking, dodging, interacting with the environment.
That sounds amazing, but also kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just talking about those real-world collisions.
Right, well, most room-scale VR systems have this guardian feature that creates a virtual boundary in your play area. So if you get too close to a wall or an obstacle, a virtual wall pops up and warns you to step back.
Oh, that's good. I can definitely see myself getting so lost in the game that I walk right into a wall.
It happens, but once you get the hang of it, it's an incredibly liberating experience. It's like stepping through a portal into another dimension.
Okay, so I gotta ask, what kind of VR experiences are out there besides gaming?
Oh, there's a whole universe of stuff out there. Gaming is a big part of it, of course.
Right.
But VR is also being used for education, for training, for therapy, even scientific research.
It's amazing when you think about it. We've talked about all the potential downsides, but there's this whole other side that's about exploring new worlds and connecting with people and pushing the boundaries of creativity.
Absolutely. It all comes down to how we choose to use this technology. It's a powerful tool with incredible potential for both good and bad.
So true. Okay, well, this deep dive has been mind-blowing so far, but I think I need a little break from all this heavy stuff.
Yeah, me too. Let's take a step back from the philosophical and ethical dilemmas and talk about something a little more practical. When we come back, we'll discuss some tips for choosing the right VR headset and finding age-appropriate experiences for kids and families. So stay tuned.
All right, so my brain is still buzzing a little bit, but I think I'm ready for round 3.
Well, good, because we're about to get down to the practical stuff, like how to actually jump into VR if you're,
Yeah, exactly.
thinking about giving it a try.
So let's start with choosing a headset, because honestly, it feels like a new one comes out every other day.
Right. There are a lot of options out there, which is great.
It is good.
It means there's a headset for everyone, but yeah, it can be a little overwhelming trying to figure out where to start.
So what are some of the good ones?
Well, the article mentions the Oculus Quest 2, which is a popular choice, especially for beginners, because it's wireless and it's relatively affordable.
Okay, wireless.
Yeah.
That's a big plus. I already trip over enough cords in real life.
Yeah, no need to add more cords to the mix. And if you're a PlayStation fan, the PlayStation VR is a solid option too.
Oh yeah, that plugs right into the console, right?
Yeah, connects directly to your console and it offers a really immersive experience.
Okay, so once you've got your headset, what about the games themselves? I mean, there's got to be more to VR than just shooting zombies.
Oh, there's way more than just shooting zombies, you know? There's a huge variety of VR games out there. Action-adventure puzzle games, social VR platforms where you can connect with friends, attend virtual events.
Virtual events, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
That sounds kind of fun, actually.
It is fun, and it's like we've talked about the potential downsides, but there's this whole other side of VR that's about connection and creativity and exploring new worlds.
Totally.
So it's all about how you use it.
Exactly. VR is a tool.
Right.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
So, okay, but let's say you're a parent and your kid is bugging you for a VR headset. How do you even know what games are appropriate for them?
That's a great question. And just like traditional video games, VR games have age ratings,
Oh, okay.
so they can help you figure out what content is appropriate for your child's age and maturity level.
Okay, that makes sense. But even if a game is technically age appropriate, we've talked about things like motion sickness and eye strain.
Yeah, definitely. Those are things to keep in mind.
So how do you manage that?
Well, it's important to start with shorter sessions.
Yeah. Let your child gradually get used to it. And just like with any screen time, moderation is key. Make sure they're balancing their VR time with other activities.
Right.
Playing outside, reading.
Good old-fashioned stuff.
Exactly. And what about the social aspect? We talked about the potential for VR to be isolating, but could it also be a way for kids to connect with each other?
That's a good question. I mean, especially if they're shy or have trouble socializing in real life.
Yeah, I think it really depends on how VR is used. If a child is using it to connect with friends they already know or to participate in activities they enjoy, it could actually be a positive thing.
Okay.
But if it becomes a replacement for real-world interaction, then that's when you might want to be concerned.
Yeah, it's all about balance. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. VR can be a tool for connection, but it can also be a crutch that prevents us from developing those important social skills.
So true. Okay, so we've covered choosing a headset, finding age-appropriate games, setting healthy boundaries. Anything else people should keep in mind before diving into VR?
I would just add, be prepared for a learning curve.
Okay.
VR is a new way of interacting with technology, so it takes a little time to get used to it,
Yeah.
Don't be discouraged if you feel a little awkward or disoriented at first. Just take your time, experiment, have fun.
Don't expect to be a VR ninja right away.
Exactly. And remember, this technology is constantly evolving, so there's always something new to discover.
That is so exciting. Well, this has been quite a journey into the world of VR gaming. We've covered so much, from the mind-blowing possibilities to the potential pitfalls.
I'm through it all.
But I think the one thing that's clear is that VR is here to stay.
It's definitely here to stay.
And it's going to keep changing the way we live and work and play.
Absolutely. And as we move forward, it's important to keep having these conversations about the ethical implications of VR.
Right.
And make sure we're using it responsibly for the benefit of everyone.
Couldn't agree more so to our listeners. We'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Are you excited about the future of VR, or are you a little bit wary?
Yeah, let us know.
What are your hopes and fears? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And let's keep this conversation going.